Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is the Heir of Carthage, and again today we're going to be taking a look at yet another battle video from Total War Warhammer 3 that will give us some insights into how some of the factions are going to play, what some of the new mechanics look like, and of particular interest, we're going to be taking a look at a siege battle today, plus getting a closer look at Khorne going up against Cathay, since the last battle I showed was Tzeentch versus Ogres, so you got to see a minor settlement battle last time, and we're going to see a major settlement battle or a siege battle this time. And Khorne is very different than Tzeentch, and so I figured we'd start off by taking a look at their roster. Now, I showed the roster of Tzeentch in that previous battle, and then I made a special separate video with a roster of Cathay, and I will make another special separate video with the roster for the Ogres. But let's go ahead and stop right here before this battle starts and take a look at the roster for Khorne so we can get familiarized with them. Now we're going to start off here with these Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne. These are going to be an anti-infantry tool with really solid attack, good damage, and specific anti-infantry bonuses. They do have the Hellblade ability, so once they get more than 80 kills, they'll do even more damage. As with most units for Khorne, they have some spell and physical resistance, usually sitting around 20 and 25% respectively. They are demons, so they will crumble if they lose their leadership, similar to undead units. Next up is the Chaos Warriors of Khorne with halberds. As with all halberds units, they have a charge reflection. These guys are going to be anti-large and armor-piercing, a very solid unit of infantry, and a lot of these infantry units for Khorne now have Frenzy, which is going to make a big difference when it comes to resisting terror routes as long as their leadership is high. And some of these units have pretty high leadership. Next up, Chaos Warriors of Khorne with dual weapons, so a specific anti-infantry variant that are really going to shred anything with low armor and, well, honestly do decent against higher armor if that higher armor unit doesn't hit back hard against armor in turn. We got the Spawn of Khorne here, which is just the Khorne variant of Chaos Spawn. These are going to be a high damage dealing, low armor unit that doesn't break. They also have Rampage, which means you may lose control of them as they just start to shred enemies and totally won't follow orders. Next up, we've got some Minotaurs of Khorne with great weapons. These are going to be very similar to Minotaurs with great weapons from the current Total War. They do have Blood Greed, which will give them some bonus stats depending on the situation they're in, but basically an anti-armor, anti-large weapon. Moving on from there, we've got the Fleshhounds of Khorne, and the Fleshhounds of Khorne have a large weapon damage, fairly limited models at only 32 models, but this is going to be a fast-moving, extremely high damage-dealing unit to anything low armor, albeit it is low armor itself, but again, as with Khorne, spell resistance and physical resistance. Next up is the Gore Beast Chariot of Khorne. This is going to be a specific anti-armored infantry tool that is going to do a ton of damage to armored infantry, and is going to be very capable in that regard. Next up over here, we're going to have the Blood Crushers of Khorne, which is a cavalry unit with very high armor, pretty solid charge, and they are going to absolutely annihilate armored infantry. They're going to be extremely good. They also have Hellblade, so again, they cruise past 80 kills, and they're going to start doing even more damage. And then we have the Skull Crushers of Khorne, which is similar, but without the specific anti-infantry, but these guys come with a really good shield and even more armor. So again, a very good anti-armor unit that does massive charge damage. So going to be an interesting cavalry unit there. Next up, we've got the Skull Cannon, which is an interesting artillery piece because it's very fast and doubles as a decent chariot-type unit in melee against infantry, doing armor damage and doing pretty good range damage. Fairly limited ammunition, but I mean, this is going to be a dangerous unit and a very nice addition because it's not going to make Khorne have to really sit around and guard their artillery. Their artillery will be able to keep up with the army and keep moving. So, very interesting addition to the Khorne roster, and Khorne is going to be a premier rush faction, no doubt about it. Got the Blood Shrine of Khorne here, which is going to provide some area of effect buffs, while also being kind of a magic chariot anti-infantry type unit. And you'll see those buffs right here. It can heal itself, and then it buffs nearby units' melee attack and leadership. So, again, a good unit to help make your units do more. And it, like I said, it can heal in melee. Again, specifically anti-infantry damage. Now we've got the Soul Grinder. This is the Khorne version, not the Tzeentch version. And holy crap, does it have some melee stats. Like, this thing is going to hit like an absolute truck. It has a lot of ammunition that also does good missile damage, and it can fire while moving. And it's fast on top of that. Not like crazy fast, but it's fast. This is going to be a very powerful SEM, and it's going to be really good against armor. It also does flaming damage, so heaven forbid anything has fire weakness. when this thing shows up, it is going to get ugly. Then over here we've got the Blood Reaper. Now this is just going to be, again, another anti-armored infantry tool. Also does flaming and magic damage. This is going to be, it's got some special abilities on it too, up front. You can see those attached down there over the unit portrait. I know one of them was Deadly Onslaught, the other was the extra stamina type thing, so it does have some interesting abilities. You can pause it as you go through there, but another support unit that's an anti-infantry chariot. It's a pretty common theme among Khorne. Bringing loads of infantry against Khorne does not seem like a good idea from everything we can see. And the next unit's going to prove that yet again. This is actually going to be a Bloodthirster. It is actually an anti-large tool, though. But this is a unit that can fly, meaning it can also land. That's a new feature. It's a single entity monster that causes high AP damage, and again, specific anti-large damage. Has the option to fly, or it can be grounded as well. So it's going to be a very interesting unit. And then we've got the Exalted Bloodthirster, which gives up the anti-large specific, but also does even better melee damage, has very high attack. This is going to be a very strong unit, has special abilities bound to it, because again, Khorne doesn't do magic, right? So these are just special abilities that are bound to it. It causes fear and terror, and comes with a lot of nice treats here, like the ability to encourage nearby troops. So this is going to be a very powerful tool in the army of Khorne. Be able to take down large enemy units and also be able to motivate the troops. So that is the roster for Khorne. Basically, tons of anti-armor, lots of mobility, and the ability to absolutely slaughter infantry, but don't be fooled. There's definitely capability in there for them to take out large units as well. But again, it looks like bringing a bunch of infantry and then ending up in a slugfest against Khorne is a bad idea. Here's some special army abilities too. They're over here. Again, you can go back, pause it on these, and check those out. I'm not going to run through them in detail at the moment, but that is the roster of Khorne. So now let's flip back over to the battle. Alright, so at this point, Josh is still setting up his army for the siege. You can actually see in this siege battle, when you take a look at the mini-map up there, that this is a almost 360-degree siege. It's funny, the minor settlement allowed you to attack from all sides. In these siege battles, it appears not, and maybe that's just to give the defenders a little more advantage or something like that, just to have a place to put their back against the wall. The map design is very different than any siege maps we saw from Warhammer 2. You'll kind of see that as we go through it. It does look like it has more opportunities for the player to set up ambushes, choke points, stuff like that. However, I do believe he's playing against the AI here, and the AI, in my opinion, and you can see whether yours differs, but I'm not convinced the AI is going to be able to handle all of these decisions great. I think they'll be there. I think they'll put up a fight. But I think a player is going to be able to do a lot here that the AI can't. Now, that's not new. That's pretty much the case in current Total War as well. The players can do lots of things the AI can't. But hopefully we'll see improved ability for the AI to really take advantage of these maps over time, and on the higher difficulty levels, maybe present a lot more of a challenge to the players. But anyway, let's see. We got the towers here shooting for Cathay, this large settlement here, the major settlement that Khorne is going after. And of course, the forces of Khorne have multiple towers, so they're going to be able to get on the walls. And they've got plenty of units who can bash down gates as well. And I didn't see a particular load of missile units on the wall for Cathay, so Khorne will be able to approach relatively unscathed, except for the tower fire. And don't get me wrong, that tower fire can be pretty powerful, as we know from past Total Wars, not just even Warhammer entries, but in other games as well. Now you'll notice at the top of the screen, there is like a totally red bar there. I believe that has to do with who owns the capture points, or a victory point. And then, of course, next to it, you see some icons that are currently red. Those are different capture points that are held by the AI here, who is in control of Cathay. And some of those give supplies to the Cathay player. And remember that supplies can be used to build fortifications and to put up, barriers and blocking and all that other kind of stuff. So the player who's attacking will want to take those resources away from the defenders in order to, make that less of an advantage for them. So we're going to see the Bloodthirsters, the Exalted one and the Bloodthirster, just fly over the walls and get into it with some Jade Warriors, and that's a great decision. You can actually see either a Sky Lantern or I forget the name of the regular one here. But anyway, there's some floating artillery there for Cathay, and the Bloodthirsters also have the opportunity to fight against that too. So they've got both options. So we're going to see the combat get going. Khorne is, of course, going to love being in a melee. His Exalted Bloodthirsters are going to be extremely good at clearing out armored infantry, and honestly, even unarmored infantry. And then the Chaos Warriors of Khorne, those with dual weapons, are also going to be extraordinarily good at cleaning out infantry. And when it comes to, say, like Jade Warriors with a sword, who don't do armor piercing in return, the Chaos Warriors of Khorne with dual weapons are going to also absolutely annihilate those, because those are a defensive unit, and the Chaos Warriors of Khorne with dual weapons are a very offensive unit. But they still maintain some things that make them decent in defense, like an absolute crap load of armor. So you can see the forces of Khorne pushing their way in, and are no doubt going to be going after targets like those crane gunners we saw back here. These flesh hounds, again, we mentioned them in the roster. They do very high damage to low armor units, very high damage, and would be excellent at running down any crossbows or peasant archers, especially artillery, anything like that. They do not do specific armor piercing, but at 65 weapon damage, they're going to take a good chunk out of whatever they hit, assuming they get enough hits. They're a little bit squishy, though, because they're going to have low armor, but they make up for some of that with some physical resistance. So as long as they're not coming up against units that have a lot of magic damage, to be all right. Now over here you can see Miao Ying has transformed into the Storm Dragon. She is creating some problems for some of Khorne's units over there. And remember, that is we saw that unit in one of my previous videos. The Storm Dragon is a very powerful melee and caster unit. Probably some of the most powerful we've ever seen. Not surprising here that the Jade Warriors with halberds are going to eventually give up the ghost to this infantry of Khorne. I don't imagine that Cathay is going to have any chance of sitting around winning infantry fights one-on-one against Khorne. In fact, I don't think much of anybody's going to have any chance sitting around winning infantry fights against Khorne. That is just not going to be the way that you want to fight them, because that is going to be where they are supremely dominant, and they pay a price for it. They don't have magic. Now, of course, they do have spell resistance, which is good for them, but they basically pay the price of magic, and they don't have a lot of missile units. Like, they've got the cannon, but outside of that, they really just don't have a lot of missile options. So that's typically going to be how you're going to want to punish Khorne, is to be able to take chunks out of them from range and weaken them, and basically just be able to resist the overwhelming melee stats for long enough that they're going to bring. Looks like he's going to use some abilities on Miao Ying, try and cause some damage. Again, I've about said spells, and I guess they kind of are, but they're more like bound abilities, because I don't think Khorne, I don't know the lore perfectly, but I don't think Khorne likes casters. I guess thinks they're tricky and untrustworthy, which I guess would be the opposite of Tzeentch, who is like all about magic. So kind of fun seeing the different flavors of chaos come to light here. And again, that's something that I just love about Warhammer. It just keeps bringing you back where you just want to play more. Looks like we either had the Skull Crushers or the Skull Crushers, and I forget the name of the other cavalry, but it looks like that's what's up against Miao Ying right now. And then they've got the Exalted Bloodthirster in there, so Miao Ying's going to end up in a very difficult fight. She can heal. I don't know whether the AI will be doing that, but she is going to be in an absolutely crushing fight right there. Despite her power, that is going to be, I think, way more than she can handle. At least not by herself. You know, she would need some halberd units or something to help out. Right now, she's got the Terracotta Sentinel coming in to help her, and that will make a big difference. But there's a lot of units for Khorne in that vicinity, and I don't imagine Miao Ying getting out of that fight in any good shape at the moment. You can also see some of the Sky Lantern units being chased off by the Bloodthirster, and then the Skull Cannon, of course, can now be moved up, and if it does run out of ammunition, it makes for a pretty good chariot. And then I'm trying to remember, I can't remember right offhand, but doesn't the Skull Cannon get ammunition from kills because it uses skulls? I could be wrong. I don't remember, but that'd be really cool if it does. If it doesn't, then I guess that's okay too, but it almost sounds like it's expected. Anyway, you can see Miao Ying is defeated there. Just way too much strength in that fight. The Terracotta Sentinel came too late to help protect her. That is a lot of just crushing cavalry in there, and then you combine that with the Exalted Bloodthirster. Not going to be a whole lot surviving that type of melee unless she can really throw a lot at it, and it doesn't really surprise me either. I played this survival battle a long time ago with Kislev versus Khorne, and it was really difficult to take out some of Khorne's units in a prolonged melee. You definitely had to use magic, and despite their spell resistance, you can use magic effectively against blobs for Khorne, assuming that you use enough of it, and again get them sufficiently blobbed. They're not immune to it. They just take less damage from it, right? They're definitely not immune to it, and it's going to be one of the ways, along with missiles, that you're going to want to face this very rushy, very melee-centric Chaos faction here. So it looks like most of the defenses for Cathay kind of just got pushed out of the way here by Khorne. And again, I'm not surprised. Cathay was fighting in small, disjointed groups across the map. The AI, I'm not sure whether or not it knows how to take advantage of the whole yin and yang thing. And that's definitely going to be what Cathay would need to survive an assault by Khorne like this, is not coming in one by one. I kind of think that Cathay in a siege battle would need to be able to pick a position where you can either operate as 3 or 4 small groups that have really good support for each other, or a place where your army can operate pretty close together in order to help defend itself. So I'm not sure that sitting on the walls and defending against Khorne is going to be the way to go. I wouldn't imagine that really being the way to stop Khorne as Cathay in a siege battle, like to line up on the wall and go toe-to-toe with them in melee. I think you're going to want to have other plans of that. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the AI can do. Some people are kind of really worried about this, like in the comments from the last video. Look, the AI is not going to be able to handle all this. The AI already can't handle like what we throw at it, so I'm not saying that I like that. It's just nothing new, right? It's nothing new. The AI has always failed to be very good at, defending in a siege. We haven't gotten to play it yet. We haven't gotten to see it. I say we haven't gotten to see it. We've gotten to see it here in a limited fashion. So before I make any judgments, I'd like to get a hold of the game in full and play it more to see how the AI does. Maybe sometimes it does better. Maybe sometimes it does worse. I don't know. But like I said, it's a lot more for the AI to have to think about and crunch through, so I do expect that it will make coding the AI more complex, because whatever algorithms you have for decision making would need to be more complex. But this one looks like it's going to be a very clear victory for Khorne. You can actually see now that red bar up on the top middle there, on the right hand side of that, is starting to turn green, and that's because Khorne is starting to capture the victory point. And that is one way you can win these battles, is go get into that victory point. The other way, of course, would be to just absolutely crush the enemy resistance. So you've got a couple of options on how to obtain victory. Nothing new there. That's pretty much the same as what we've seen in past Total Wars. So just some closing thoughts for me as this battle wraps up. The siege maps look much better. The way that the sieges are going to take place seems like an improvement. Obviously, of course, to be fair, not hard to improve. We're at Warhammer 2, the sieges were pretty lame. Khorne as a faction here does look pretty interesting, and they look very powerful in melee. It definitely has me wondering if they had just nerfed them in our survival battle, because they look pretty darn strong in melee here, and I don't remember having this many problems with them whenever I was playing. But again, I'm a player, this is the AI, so hard to say. And I'm not just a player, I'm a player who has a lot of time in Total War. I may not be like a pro or winning all the tournaments, but I've got enough time in Total War to know my way around. It's not like I'm a gaming journalist here, playing something for the first time and then reviewing it. But in any case, Khorne looks interesting. I like the map here for Cathay. It's very thematic, very interesting looking map. Again, the AI wasn't able to do much by way of defense here, but again, gives us an interesting glimpse into what we can expect in Warhammer 3. Now, a couple things to remember. This is all still a development in progress. This is not a final build. Stats are not final, although CA did say that the unit stats are ballpark and should be close. So they're not planning on making massive changes, but they should be close, I think is what they said. But interesting battle. Would love to see your thoughts below, so make sure you get down in the comments. Tell me what you think. Do you think Siege is improved? Does this get you excited? Does it not have you excited? What do you think should still be better? And then, of course, if you watched this and you enjoyed the video, please take the time to go hit that like button. And if you want to see more, click subscribe and the bell, and you'll be notified, because I do have more that's going to be coming over the next days as far as news for Warhammer 3. And if you're interested in the game, you won't want to miss it. So I will see you then. HeirofCarthage signing out for now.